Hey everyone, welcome to LEAP, the League of Emergent Architectural Practitioners. I'm your host, Stephen Corliss. Today we are going to take a look at how an architect designs a kitchen. So let's jump right into it. I have a floor plan that is 90% of the way there already in terms of design for this kitchen layout, but I thought it would be helpful just to show some of the ideas that were used behind laying this kitchen out, and then we'll just complete some of the missing pieces here. Just for reference, if you find this content interesting, it's part of a longer series of videos that I do live as architectural mentorship, and you can find those videos on our playlist or podcast. This is considered a linear kitchen, and I'm just toggling back and forth between the floor plan and 3D view. I also have some perspective views of this kitchen set up here, and it is a very efficient, compact kitchen. We do have 9-foot ceilings in this home, so that affords us some nice floor-to-ceiling height. And the difference between a linear and a U-shaped or L-shaped kitchen is simply that you've got one wall of utilities, an island, and or a galley-style kitchen where you have just an aisle that's separating two countertops. In this setup, we wanted to get everything in terms of utilities off to one side, and then keep the island free of any utilities, such as the dishwasher or the sink. I'll just walk through some of the things that are very important in terms of kitchen design. Number one being, we usually like to stack all the verticals off to one side. What that means is if you have pantry units or the refrigerator, it's nice to clump those together and put them off to one or the other side. There are a lot of designs that have those items split. So for instance, in this iteration, if we did have vertical pantry units, we would group them together with the refrigerator off to this side. Or you have probably seen in some modern designs or apartment designs, vertical pantry units on one side, the refrigerator on the other, and then your grouping of utilities in the center. Usually completely adjacent to an island so that it's symmetrical. In this case, we actually have a walk-in pantry that is off across the space. It's not ideal in terms of placement. Usually, if we had the space or the configuration called for it, this would be a lot closer to the triangle of the functionality of the kitchen. So off to one side or the other side with a pocket door so you can just slip in and out and grab some cooking items or even storage for some extra appliances can be stored in there. But for our purposes, this works out good enough, and that's sometimes okay. So let's jump into an elevation view. And so I've got an enlarged plan here. And when I take a look at that, this is how it's starting to shape up in elevation. And if you're asking, is the architect responsible for laying all of this out in this manner? It depends on the scope and services of the architect that you hire. A lot of times people hire architects simply to do drafting and engineering, but in many cases the architect will take on the responsibility of laying things out a little more diligently so that you have more intentional alignments in your home. And so, for instance, we wanted this linear setup because it's a very linear home. If you can tell from the floor plan, we have spaces that you kind of move through to get back to this kitchen area here. And even in doing that, we had some window alignments that align with the front to the back of the house, window alignments that line up with the windows on the second floor. So there are just some ins and outs that do make a difference in terms of the architect helping with this lineup and design. One of the alignments that we have here is this hallway corridor just sort of running all the way across. And in some of the earlier episodes, I was describing this walkway being nice in terms of the view outside this window that we have in front of the sink, but also for the usability of the sink and the dishwasher that tend to be used fairly often within the kitchen. It's nice to have those spaces a bit more freed up from this sort of aisle space where the cooktop and oven would be. So there's an alignment there. We did end up using an 8-foot island, and another alignment was getting the oven and hood to align on the center of this island. So in previous episodes I was mentioning the difficulty in doing that and the rigidity that is required for something like that. So I'm gonna hop in and just sort of start tweaking some things and discussing along the way. So the first thing I did when laying this out was pull the refrigerator away from the exterior wall, and that is so we can open the door with the handle not jamming into the window or the wall that's adjacent to it. And so you're going to want a minimum of 3 inches. Typically 5 inches is a lot safer. It allows the door not only to open 90 degrees, but a few degrees beyond that. It ensures that the door kind of stays open, propped open. We all know or probably have seen some of these images of architectural design failures where you have a door and or a drawer in the corner pulling out into one another, and you're not able to pull the door or drawer out because it's conflicting with something. We want to avoid that here. And so likewise, at the opposite end, on this end over here, we decided to put the dishwasher all the way towards the end and locate the sink a little bit off of that, so we had some countertop space. If you're unloading or loading dishes, you've got 24 inches off to the left of the sink. It looks like we're going to have about 24 or maybe 21 inches off to the right hand of the sink as prep space before we get into the centered oven and hood. But what I was mentioning is you're going to want to make sure that this is pulled off so that you're not conflicting with any trim, which right now we actually are. So again, 3 inches minimum is safe. It's going to compensate for any fluctuations in the wall, and also half-inch or 3/4 inch trim that's going on a cased opening or anything like that. So I'm just going to make sure I do that now. I'm going to take this dishwasher, this cabinet sink unit, and some of these other items, and just go back into my plan view and pull it off 3 inches. Now I know between the refrigerator filler panel there and this filler panel we have 6 inches of play, which is good. I would say that that's appropriate for a kitchen of this size. When you do get into the shop drawings and reviewing these things and having the cabinet fabricators coming out on site, you can always field measure and adjust. So if those 6 inches are extremely important, you can at least recoup 3 of those inches maybe by reducing one or the other of these and incorporating that back into a cabinet. But in my experience, you're going to need that space. So we shifted that over. Let's see, that should have shifted over with it. I'm just making sure that these things didn't change in width, which they did not. I'm going to go to my reflected ceiling plan. And so if you are an architect or you're a student, you will know the process of working between all these different views. So hopefully it's not making anybody dizzy here, but that's just really how architects tend to work. So I'm recentering, or just pulling out this hood, because I know that the hood is going to be at least the width of the oven down below. So before I promise myself any of this space, I'm going to kind of recoup that. And you are going to want to make sure that you are cross-referencing appliances. So a lot of times the appliances will be out of the architect's scope and the responsibility of the homeowner to specify. But if they need help with that, it can always be an additional service, or just review their list for them. But it's going to be important to understand what the widths are of some of these appliances or all the appliances, just to ensure that all your spacing is correct. And so what I have here, I'm actually proposing to them, and so I know that this works based on just projects we've done before. So this was something that I knew we were going to run into, is once I made the hood this size, it was going to squeeze down these cabinets. We had 3 15-inch cabinets, which was pretty small anyway, and so I'm going to look at the space that we had left over now after we did that, and we've got 3'7". So 3'6" is a good dimension. That's 42, so I can do 2 21-inch uppers, and then we can just always pull that extra space away from the wall. And so if you're asking, or if you're unfamiliar with cabinet widths and how I was able to so quickly do those calculations, it's pretty simple. Cabinets, standard cabinets, they come in 3-inch increments, and then uppers are going to be anywhere from 30 inches to 3 feet, and then you can extend them higher beyond that if you don't have a soffit or don't want a soffit above. In my experience, for an elevation view like this with 9-foot ceilings, so if you're looking at the level tag here, it's because these levels are not set with 0 at level 1. People, they generally don't access the top, the very, very top of the cabinets. It's just where the cup from Disney lands that gets shifted back into the cabinet that you never see again. So that's kind of a goofy way of saying that this soffit that we dropped down was purposeful. A, it's going to save you on cabinet costs for that extra height, and B, it gave us this unique opportunity to run an LED light just under the soffit of this, just tucked in off the fascia of it, so that we can get some illumination, wall washing or cascading down the face of these cabinets. And then we'll also put some under cabinet lighting throughout there as well. So we wanted this soffit in here to create like a hard line defining zone for this. One thing also that I forgot to mention is countertop depth. So if you're looking at this and thinking, okay, Steven, this is looking fairly nice. One of the reasons it's looking fairly nice is because we increased the countertop depth to 30 inches. And so I've gotten a lot of pushback and some comments on this on some videos I posted. But with all the clients we've worked with who we've proposed this to, and all the research I've done on other design companies that do this, it is always a welcomed extra 6 inches on the countertop to have them 30 inches deep versus your standard 24-inch depth countertop. What that also does is keeps all of this in line so that you don't have this corner of the refrigerator protruding beyond the depth of the countertop. So I'm just going to draw in 24 inches here so you can see what that looks like. This is where it was, and then so maybe it's gonna trigger your memory of what this typically looks like when you have the countertop at 24 and the refrigerator protruding out. We dislike that very much. And so with a typical countertop depth refrigerator, you're going to be at 30 inches on that unit. And so what we do, the trick is to pull the cabinets forward 6 inches off the wall, which does allow for some utility chases and waterline connections from the sink to the dishwasher, and it doesn't increase your cost for cabinet depth. You can regain a few extra inches on your cabinets if you wanted to make them custom and make them more than the 24-inch depth, but really all of our clients that have opted to use this detail have been fine not recapturing the extra storage space behind there and gaining that extra countertop space. And in terms of countertop costs, something like this was going to require 2 slabs to be purchased anyway. And if you don't use all of the slab, a lot of it gets reused on other projects. You can ask to keep the slab, but most homeowners don't have anywhere to store large portions of granite or marble. Stone slabs typically come in 5 foot by 9-foot or 10-foot increments. And so if you're not using the full 30 inches, there's a lot of waste. So that's a long way of saying this is how this lineup is looking so kind of flush. And if you do like that look, that is a trick that you can do. So let me jump back into that elevation, and what we were doing was I was taking this, I was going to change it to a 21. Another thing to mention, with the deeper countertop, you are also going to want to opt for the deeper upper cabinet. Upper cabinets typically come in 12-inch depths or 15-inch depths, 1'3". And then so with this, I guess we could just mirror these now. And if I did my math right, it's going to give us that little extra space there. And I'm just going to take all of this and pull this over. And then just snap this to that exterior wall. And so that makes me feel more comfortable anyway about the depth of this panel. It went from 3 inches to 4 3/4, so just under 5. That's perfect. Okay, now I know I am fully aligned from this way over with the oven centered on the island. And if we were running into major issues in terms of too big of gaps or just awkward sizing for these units, we could, or we have the ability to play with the island size or just keep things just off center. That's not like optimal by any stretch of the imagination, but you have to remember there's construction tolerances here, right? Or if you don't know that, you should. In field, you know, there's 1/4-inch plays, there's times where you've got to add these filler pieces. I should save, so let me just do a quick save. Okay, so what's nice about this is I know I can put 2 21-inch units down below. So I'm going to do that real quick just to fill these in. Okay, and so we just got one in there that we are going to turn the handles off. I've got that as an option on my pieces here, and just duplicate this over. And so now I know that that's working nice. These are going to work nice for pots and pans. I will say where sometimes we start to draw the line, especially if it's not included in our services, is getting too deep into the specifications of the breakup of these cabinets, meaning does the client want a 3-drawer unit here? Do they want a 2-drawer, or do they want a 1-door panel there? So that's something that we leave for the clients to do unless they want to engage in our services to take that next step further with them. Now, what I'm seeing here is we've got this lineup here. I just tried to mirror this over just to see how this grouping was going to work, but it doesn't look like we're going to have an equal spacing for the 21-inch units here. So we're going to have to fall off and just have sort of an asymmetrical kitchen layout here, which I think is fine. In doing that, let's just size this here 1'6". That worked out perfectly. Okay. Here I will say let's put just for recommendation purposes a 3-drawer unit. So I'm going to make this, I've got a flat 3-drawer 18-inch. So there we've got basically our lineup for this left-hand side here. I am going to go in my floor plan and put down a filler, put that there, rotate it into place. And I'm just double checking that it's on my finished floor. 3 inches wide, and the height 2'10.5". For anyone not familiar, the typical cabinet height is 2'10.5", so that you can add your countertop on that. That gets you the 1 1/4 1 1/4 is how thick your thicker slabs are, and then 3/4 of an inch is how thick the 2 cm slabs are. So that's something just to keep in mind when you are modeling these things up. If you see that dimension, that's where that comes from. So I got my filler piece at the corner there, so I know I'm gonna have a filler piece up at the head there. I've got a 2 foot, I've got a 36, and then I've got an 18. We could follow that, or we could see how that divides up evenly between 3 units. So 24, that's 5, that's 6.5, 6.5 feet, that's 72, 78. 78 divided by 3 is 26. That's not a standard unit. So the closest one is going to be 24, but then you're going to be left over with a pretty large side panel there. So let's see how it looks if we make this an 18 and then just run the span, breaking up the remaining 5 feet into 30-inch uppers. So let's change this to an 18. Already colored white, so that's good. So that's going to align with that. And then I think if we propose like some garage door units, which I don't know if I actually have in my model, so I won't waste our time doing that. We'll just do that for now. Just know that this is basically a game that you will need to play. So there you go. We'll put the filler piece up there. Usually best to put the filler pieces in on your floor plan. Got to put it against the wall there. It's already 3 feet or 3 inches. And then our depth you got to change to 1'3". It's cabinets painted white. Height 3 feet. That should be enough, and then we can adjust it in elevation. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think that's looking like a good layout. I won't get too deep into some of the other architectural features on this. Just wanted to keep this sort of a concise kitchen-focused video for now. And just for consideration, some of the other things we were looking at or the window placement, whether or not this should be full length across this entire back wall, which I'll just do for now for fun while we're talking about it. The thing with that is, I'll just try and center it just so we can kind of get an idea. The thing with that is, I mean, that looks awesome. I don't know if we'd be able to get one full length panel, and I would probably want to create the divisions of this in purposeful locations. But again, I'm just trying to get the general idea here. A couple other points, if you are watching this video and you're planning on commenting, this back wall here leads out into a backyard area with a detached garage. I think I can twirl this around a little bit in this view here. The island, like we said, was centered, and in this floor plan, we don't have all the space in the world, but I did allocate 3'6" between the primary utility wall and that kitchen island, and usually you want to preserve at least 4 feet behind the island. I'm going to see if we can squeeze this down a little bit in terms of the depth. We're at 3 feet. It doesn't have utilities in it. I am planning to put storage in it, so when I rotate it around this way, that's something I don't think we'll get to this video, but it's just more of the same, kind of planning the spacing, getting that equally spaced out, and it might make sense to crunch this down a little bit. And, you know, we might want to pull it off the line of this wall so it's not forcing the contractors in field to line this up so perfectly. Some of those things are like subtleties in terms of design, but also understanding construction and field conditions that you need to consider while you're designing, but also while you're on site doing site visits, working with the contractor and the homeowner, explaining to them what does and doesn't work. But I'm really liking this right now. I'll probably do a rendering and host that as the cover image to this video. But just to finish up and kind of conclude, we did some spacing exercises. I discussed the deeper countertop depth and the countertop depth refrigerator. That is always 30 inches, and so the countertop matches that depth. Aisle widths, you don't want to go, 3 feet is the minimum, but if you've got doors, meaning, cabinet doors, but more importantly, oven doors, dishwasher doors that are pulling down into this aisle, they usually sit up, so they're not the full height of 3 feet, so it would never come and clash into opposing countertop. But if you are trying to stand at the end of it, or just for some flexibility of space, 3'6", or at least 3'3" is where you should set your minimums for aisles. Honestly, going much more than that, it can feel spacious, and it's appropriate in much larger homes, which we do propose in larger spaces that it can accommodate it. But when they can't accommodate it, or even when they do, we have had clients say that anything beyond 4 feet is kind of a stretch. It makes turning around from one countertop to the next feel like you're taking more than 2 steps, which is breaks the flow of the kitchen and the cooking. So hopefully this video was interesting and or helpful to you. Like I mentioned before, if you have any interest in architectural mentorship or videos like this, we do live workshop sessions where it's basically me just working on projects for the company that I'm a founder of, and it spans everything from preliminary planning, existing conditions, zoning analysis, and we get into architectural design of interiors, exteriors, first floor, second floor layouts, additions, new construction, everything in between, including site visits and construction administration. So if that's of interest to you, this channel is being transitioned to focus solely on that type of content. And so head over to one of the playlists that has the League of Emergent Architectural Practitioners mentorship videos on it. And there should be a playlist, and there should also be a podcast that has all those live recordings just lifted up there or uploaded there. So thanks again for stopping by. I hope this was helpful. Leave some comments and feedback for future videos that you would want to see, and I'll see you next time. Bye.